Retool is the fast way to build internal tools. As a team of developers, we realize that all internal tools are made of the same building blocks: tables, drop-downs, buttons, text inputs. But rather than building a tool from scratch and wasting hours searching for that perfect React component or wrangling data sources and APIs, Retool gives you a point, click, and drag and drop interface that makes it super simple to build internal UIs in hours, not days, all with the ability to dive in and customize every aspect with code. Companies like DoorDash, Brex, Plaid, and even Amazon use Retool to build their internal tools super fast. Give Retool a try now at retool.com. That's retool.com. Hi, I'm Scott Hanselman, and it's another episode of Hansel Minutes. Today I'm talking with Anjana Vakil. She's a software engineer and educator and developer advocate working at Observable. How are you?
Hi, doing great. Really excited to be here.
I'm excited to talk with you because I'm always about learning new things. And one of the things that I'm excited about right now that I have to plead almost complete ignorance around is the topic of data visualization. I would say I'm an avid consumer of awesome visualizations. And I'll be the person who's like texting, URLs like, you have to check this out. Look how cool this data was. And I'm always telling people, look at the y-axis. It's a lie. The y-axis is always a lie. But the tech underneath it, no idea. And there's a whole universe out there, a whole ecosystem, isn't there?
There sure is. And I am just learning it myself, too. So I'm glad we can have this conversation as two learners of the wide world of data visualization, which is, it's touching all of our lives. I think we are all, consuming data visualizations on a daily basis. But it's been unclear to me for a long time how that all works. And I'm just starting to learn about it. So yeah, really excited to dig in and chat.
I think you're being a little bit modest. I mean, you did spend a number of years as an engineer and a development lead at Mapbox, putting pixels on the screen. And now you've been at Observable for, almost 18 months. Mm-hmm. But I'm hearing underneath you saying that you're just getting into it is that it's just such a broad topic and a very deep stack. There's a lot going on. You can't really learn it all, can you?
Absolutely. And for every, day that you spend studying, there's new stuff happening and new things being developed and new tools coming out. So it's, it's a little bit like the general practice of learning software development or computer science. It's constantly moving, constantly improving. Things are very dynamic. And so there is a lot to take in, a lot to learn also coming from the software developer world in terms of how visualization can be a part of that workflow. Because I think that's something that we're starting to understand a little bit better as a community, but also seeing, the ways that data visualization kind of affects us on an everyday kind of personal level, to say nothing of the kind of business analytics side of things and trying to make better data-driven decisions. So it just touches so much and there's so much to explore. And there's so many ways that we can, develop tools to make learning and doing all of that even easier.
Okay.
And that's what we're trying to do at Observable.
So let's see if we can build a bit of a story arc here with a little bit of historical context. So we'll go on a journey together. So 20 plus years ago, when I was doing banking, my visualization ability was limited to line charts, bar charts, and pie charts. And we didn't really have JavaScript. SVG, scalable vector graphics, didn't exist. So we would generate a graphic on the server side, a pie chart or a bar chart that expressed like a customer's checking account balance. And we would generate that. And people thought it was magical. People thought it was great. And that was the state of the art for years. And then scalable vector graphics, a way to express markup and vector graphics inside of the browser, were a thing. Then I kind of went out of the environment for a while and I discovered D3JS while going to like the New York Times. Can you talk a little bit about D3JS, scalable vector graphics, and what that added on top of my simple charts that I was making with JPEGs?
Yeah. So about 10 years ago, Mike Bostock, who I believe was at the New York Times at the time and is now CTO of Observable, developed D3. I believe it stands for Data-Driven Documents. So it's a way of essentially plugging data into the web document that you're putting together so that it can do really beautiful things in terms of not just visualizing data into a static SVG, which you can then make an image of, but also doing things like having interactivity that then dynamically updates the visualizations, beautiful animations and transitions between things, because seeing those visual transitions can help with understanding, right? So being able to interactively explore a data set or a data analysis visually in ways that you can actually see, okay, and then if I change, this feature that I'm looking at, that's how these numbers move around. Being able to see all of that in front of you is a really powerful way to understand what's happening. And so D3 came on the scene as this kind of revolutionary tool that allowed developers to build these beautiful, kind of mind-blowing visualizations that I think now we're all so used to seeing that we kind of take for granted in our favorite publications. Some people create really artistic, beautiful things all over the web with D3, and yeah, I think it really marked an interesting opening of a whole new realm of cool things that we can do with data visualization on the web and as web developers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like I said that I was doing these graphics 20 years ago. That's when SVG started out, 2001, 2003. And we were looking at that, but you needed a plugin to show SVG or a super new version of a browser. It wasn't a thing that was available everywhere. So it took some years for SVG, scalable vector graphics, to be available. And even then, they still ended up being kind of static. Whereas, like, here's some SVG. And we experimented with generating SVG, but again, on the server side. So we'd have some thing that would generate the SVG and we'd show it, but there was nothing dynamic about it and it didn't work everywhere. It seems to me like D3 added a couple of things. It added a really fluent jQuery-like interface where you'd build a sentence, D3 dot select dot style dot this dot that, building a sentence. And it was very terse, but also very readable. But then the additional dimension of time is where I think it all became popular. And I think it was the New York Times that really showed that, whether it be with what's called scroll jacking, where you scroll and the visualization changes. Or I remember the first time that I saw a slider bar that I could move, and it's like, wait a second, that's not static. I can look at the data the way I want to.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely.
amazing.
And I think another really cool thing about D3 coming out and JavaScript data visualization itself is that because we have the web at our fingertips, we can really integrate visualizations into dynamic, interactive web experiences. So, for example, this is amazing for journalism, data journalism, because you can integrate other parts of the interactive web page where there's text, there's context, there's other parts of the page are updating as you go through, whether it's a scrolly telling type experience, as you said, or maybe some interactive buttons and sliders and ways that you can explore the data yourself. You can really plug into the whole kind of web ecosystem to get your data visualization beautiful and interactive, and also the whole rest of the context around it to be kind of dynamically responding to however the reader or the user is moving through that visualization.
Mm-hmm. And that concept of data-driven journalism, fairly new. In the 70s, there was a concept of a thing called precision journalism, where people were saying that, like, based on these numbers, we can declare that these things are facts. But then there was a lot of conversations in the late 90s about, like, USA Today and different newspapers at the time using the y-axis as a lie, where it's like, look at this scary high chart and this scary low chart. This is a thing you should believe because y-axis. And, not everyone looks at the axis and goes, that's a logarithmic axis. That's BS. But by having data-driven journalism, where here are some facts and here's the data, here's a CSV file, the reader, the consumer, can then make their own confirmations or their own denials with that data.
Absolutely. Yeah. And unfortunately, those lying charts, as you might call them, are still all around us all the time. I saw one going around Twitter yesterday. There was some misleading axis management, as you said. And I think it's especially in cases where we're making kind of really important decisions, like the COVID pandemic, I think has really highlighted this and how important it is for us to know, how are those lines moving? And if someone presents it in the wrong way, that can give a very different impression. And I think, to your point, like, having all this out in the open, and especially the kind of open data movement, which I think has just been really amazing for journalism, for scientific fields, right, where folks can go out and reproduce the analyses that were done, and more folks, publishing their data sets, openly publishing the code that they built their analytics and visualizations with, being able to have all of that out there in the open where folks can dig into it, find problems with it if any exist, build on it and create more useful insights based on that. Like, I think that that's just been a hugely important shift, and I just really hope it's something we continue, all of us as a community, to really push on and push forward, being open with our data and our code for when we're making these kind of judgment calls. It's so important.
Yeah, I'd love it if more news sites would have, like, underneath the chart, like the CSV that the chart was based on, like, download the data and make a better visualization, because one might be more less misleading or more misleading depending on how you decide to pick that. Mike and the folks at Observable and all of their different blog posts at observablehq.com have a really great habit of having the visualization and then the table right below it. I'm looking at an Observable HQ post right now about Observable Plot, which is a new free open source JavaScript library. And I was impressed with, like, here's some stuff about Olympic athletes, and here's the data. Like, here's the table right here. Like, take this data right now. Here's exactly where the data was sourced from. And then look at, 10 different ways to express that. I really like it when it's like, here's one direction, let's rotate the cube and look at it from a different dimension, a different angle. That's never been easier than today.
Yeah, so one of the main drivers behind what we're trying to do with Observable and Observable Notebooks is to make all of the code, the visualizations, the data out in the open in a live, editable document that you can tinker with in your browser. So Observable Notebooks are made up of JavaScript, and other types of cells like Markdown or directly writing HTML markup. But essentially, we have a notebook made up of chunks of code that are editable. So anytime somebody publishes a visualization or a blog post that involves visualization and text and context and has the data right there, anybody can go to that notebook on Observable, tinker with the code. You can change things. You can look at the data, download it, look at it for yourself, and make adjustments to see, how would this analysis change if I adjusted things this way or that way? Or how would the visualization look different if I tried this approach or that approach? Or maybe I just want to take this data and play with it myself in whatever tools and whatever stack that I like to work with for data exploration, pull it into an Excel spreadsheet, whatever. And so that's one of the things that we're trying to do at Observable, is really make it easy for folks to make their data and their visualizations open and freely available to the public. And of course, also we want to support folks in learning how all these things work. And so being able to look at an amazing visualization and see what the code does and how you would get there is also part of that learning journey that we were talking about earlier.
Infrastructure as code is a way to define and manage cloud infrastructure with code. It works best when you can use your favorite languages like C#, Python, TypeScript, or Go. That's why I like Pulumi, which lets you use programming languages to build, deploy, manage your cloud infrastructure on clouds like Azure, AWS, and Google. You can write infrastructure code from your IDE with IntelliSense, or you can find examples from package managers in GitHub. Pulumi's CLI and platform make it easy to deploy, update, and manage all your cloud infrastructure from a single place. It's open source, and it's backed by a community of tens of thousands of members. Get started with Pulumi for free today at Pulumi, that's PULUMI.com. What tools are people using for data visualizations? I've seen Jupyter Notebooks. Is Observable, I've heard Observable Collaboration referred to as a notebook. Is it a notebook in the lowercase n noun or in a proper noun, as in a Jupyter Notebook with some spice added to it?
So Jupyter Notebooks and Observable Notebooks have a lot in common, and they also have some important differences. So Jupyter Notebooks they started out being kind of Python-based, but now they have implementations for all kinds of programming languages. But I think Python is still the sort of major language of choice in the Jupyter community, is my understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas Observable is all in your browser. So it's all JavaScript or
Mm.
things that are kind of web technologies, like directly writing HTML or SVG markup, or using kind of text formatting like Markdown or Tech. But at the end of the day, it's all JavaScript. It's all running in the client on the browser in your web page. And in Jupyter, traffic is going back and forth to the server. So you need this kind of like server side processing that happens on the data. So
Mm-hmm.
one thing is that in the Python community, there's so much amazing infrastructure and a whole awesome ecosystem of data analysis tools, data processing tools. So we do see sometimes folks doing, let's say, a lot of their data processing and analysis in Python or in Jupyter or in some other tool like R, for example. And then what's really amazing about Observable is that we have, immediate access to all of the web and these JavaScript-based data visualization libraries like D3, which are so powerful and so customizable that it really, if you want to make a bespoke, really beautiful, beautifully animated, beautifully interactive data visualization, doing that in JavaScript makes a lot of sense. And so we find that, folks are in the JavaScript community are doing more and more kind of building tools to work with data, to do data wrangling, to do the types of data wrangling and analysis that you might previously have been more used to doing in R or Python or something like that. Those tools are kind of coming or have, recently come to the JavaScript community to add out or sort of to add to the amazing visualization tools that we've had, including D3 in the last 10 years. So there are some similarities and differences there. I think, the fact that Observable is web-based and JavaScript-based is kind of the main thing. But what that empowers is that then in Observable, everything is driven by reactivity. So you have different cells in your notebook. As soon as you update one,
Mm-hmm.
any of the other cells that depend on that value automatically update for you. So it's driven by kind of functional reactive programming paradigm of where each cell is its sort of own little functional program, and Observable keeps track of the dependencies between them and updates everything that is relevant whenever something changes. Whereas in Jupyter, you would have to go through and kind of run code linearly, manually go back and rerun things if you adjusted something kind of high up in the dependency tree. And so this is really like where Observable becomes an amazing tool for things like prototyping and tinkering and learning by exploration. Data exploration is really amazing in that kind of reactive environment because you can instantly see changes. So you have, you maybe start out with some sample data, build the visualization you want to see, then you're making some changes to the data and the visualization is instantly updating. You make some tweaks, you can add things like sliders and buttons and checkboxes as you go. So you can take a value and kind of abstract that out into a slider to adjust parameters and thresholds. And so it gives you this really interactive, instant feedback environment for developing visualizations, and
Mm-hmm.
not just visualizations, but any code that you want. So this can be really great for all kinds of prototyping on software, on JavaScript.
Okay.
So yeah.
All right, that makes sense. So let me see if I can paraphrase to make sure I understand, because this I'm starting to put this all together in my head.
Sure.
So when I do stuff in Jupyter, and again I do it in C#, we all because we have
Sure.
.NET notebooks and things like that, but Python and all the different polyglot notebooks that are out there, the cells exist. You hit run cell, the cell then changes the context, and then you kind of do things somewhat linearly, and then you'll see people inject polyglot notebooks where they'll have some D3 in there, but you've got your data wrangling on the server side, your big data that's getting chewed, and then the closer it gets to visualization time, the more well chewed that data needs to be. So you might do that work in Python or R or something on the server side. You might use data lakes or data services, some big data services to chew up that stuff. Once you start getting into the browser, to your point, you use the word bespoke, right? To go and create something that's truly created from scratch, exploratory visualizations. Explanatory visualizations. You might want to do those in in D3 and low level. But if you're going to go and collaborate, not doing explanatory visualizations, but rather exploratory stuff, like I don't really know what's going on here, I want to look at the data and bring my friends in and my coworkers in, then you're starting to do reactive, which is funny that you mentioned that because you were on the show hundreds of episodes ago, show 588. And it was because you were always applying a functional and a reactive perspective to JavaScript. So it makes sense why you're doing this work at Observable, because you've been into the whole functional reactive JavaScript thing since before it was hip.
Well, I don't know about that, but I certainly, when I started learning JavaScript, and I found out about functional programming at around the same time, I had been mostly living in an imperative, object-oriented, lots of scripting kind of world. And when I started learning JavaScript, I found that functional programming made JavaScript make sense to me. That I felt so much more comfortable and productive programming in a functional style in JavaScript, because, I mean, largely because parts of JavaScript's approach to object orientation, prototypal inheritance, all this stuff I found very confusing. I could never remember the rules for what this is. I was just, always trying to calculate things and think about the state of stuff. And that was just really a struggle for me in JavaScript, more so than it had been. I started out with Python as my first kind of programming language. And so moving into JavaScript, functional just felt like such a nice fit. And I think Observable has just made me want to double down on that assertion that that when you have an environment like this, where if you're writing your code in a certain way, if you're trying to write it with a lot of global state mutation and things like that, you're not going to have a great time, because that's going to compete with the way Observable is trying to execute your code for you in a reactive, dynamic way so that you don't have to go manually rerun a bunch of cells. But if you write code in a functional style, and you're thinking about the benefit of functional programming being, breaking things into little modular chunks and then being able to compose those so that you can change one piece and everything else will still work. Doing that in this reactive environment where everything is kind of at your fingertips, you can see the results immediately. If you change one function higher up in your kind of mental model or sort of in your code path here to creating your visualization, you can instantly see the effect that change has. And that has just been really great for me in terms of working in a functional style in JavaScript. And so I think Observable is super useful, even if I'm not doing something super visual, even if I'm just kind of prototyping an algorithm or a piece of functionality that I'm trying to figure out. It's really useful when you kind of break it down into those modular functions and then can see them all updating instantly in front of you.
So many years ago, Mike Bostock goes and creates D3 as part of his job while doing visualizations at New York Times. It's been around now. It's very mature. It's been 10 years. He's been maintaining it. And now there's this observable plot, which is an open source library for exploring data and visualizations. From what I understand, plot builds on top of D3, but this is about which layer do you, the developer, want to come in at. Maybe you can help me understand, when do I want to say, I'm going to draw something with some data, I need D3, or I want to draw something and explore it, I want to use observable plot?
Yeah, no, that is an excellent question. And thank you so much for bringing up observable plot. You're doing my job for me.
I just want to learn how to be a better programmer. But yeah, if that does your job for you, I'm happy for it.
No, absolutely. So observable plot is a really exciting new kind of newcomer on the JavaScript data viz scene that is informed by 10 years of learnings from working on D3. And so Mike Bostock created plot as a higher level data viz library that, to your point earlier, is really well suited to the exploratory phase of data analysis and visualization. And so there are times when you want a really beautiful, artistic, animated, exciting, customized visualization that no one has ever seen before, that you're going to use your amazing JavaScript and D3 skills to build. And D3 is perfect for that because it is super low level. It gives you a lot of amazing tools, but you do need to kind of put those pieces together in order to create the visualization. So there can be a fair amount of legwork involved, but the trade-off is that you can do really incredible things that are completely customized. Observable plot is more intended for, look, I don't need to reinvent the wheel of data visualization right now. I need to understand this data set that I'm trying to work with. I need to see a bar chart. I need to see a scatter plot with dots. I need to see a line and see what the slope of that curve looks like. And so for that kind of more, I would say, more exploratory and more kind of, you want to get basic insights into a data set, and you want to get basic insights into the trends in that data, and how that data kind of answers certain questions that you have about whatever aspect of the world is captured in that data. Plot is amazing for that because it allows you to really quickly get from 0 to the chart that you need to make the decision that you need to make. And that might be kind of a preliminary step in a longer data visualization process that ends up with a really beautiful customized D3 visualization, which you were able to build because you had done proper kind of preliminary data exploration to understand the data and what kind of shape it's in and what patterns are emerging from it with a higher level tool like Plot before you went and jumped in and tried to build a really kind of complex customized visualization with a lower level tool like D3.
Mm-hmm. So I go up to observablehq.com and I start exploring, and I learn, and I'm reading the observable plot, announcing blog posts. It's like, hey, Mike, this is really cool. And then I go down to the bottom and it says, here's some resources. And one of them is exploring weather. One of them is exploring penguins. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking at the one with the penguin data set, and it's got like the bill, the length of the penguin's bill and the depth of the bill. And I'm looking and I'm saying, well, gosh, where are the plots? And I'm realizing, am I looking at a blog post that is itself a dynamic tutorial, and you want me to do it?
Absolutely are. Yes. And so this is one thing that I personally am really excited about with an environment like Observable, a platform like Observable, because I think it's amazing for teaching and for helping learners explore. So we have some really great tutorials that a couple of my colleagues at Observable, Philippe Rivière and Ian Johnson, put together that are these interactive kind of explainer documents where it, in a very scaffolded way, kind of helps you get from, I have no idea what's in this data set, to I know the answers to some important questions I could ask of this data thanks to Plot. And I've also learned how to use Plot to answer those questions of a data set. So this is an example of why having everything happen in the browser and be in editable JavaScript is amazing, because you can actually go through and make changes to the code and try out different things and try to match a target visualization, or try to use hints that we're giving you in the text or in kind of interactive UI widgets to iteratively come up with the chart that will answer the questions you're looking for. And so I think this is just a really exciting thing to be able to combine the power of the web and this kind of instant responsive JavaScripty goodness with these data visualization libraries, which let you take your data, put it right into the notebook, get a visualization out at the end, and as you make adjustments, immediately see the output of the code that you're changing without having to install anything, no development setup, just open a browser, no account needed, just go.
It's so fun. I don't know if you'll find this funny, but I found it funny. I'm reading the observable plot announced by Mike, and I start hovering over these things, and I'm like, am I logged in as admin? I thought I was going to accidentally edit the blog post because it was so dynamic. I thought I was on a Medium website, and I had been somehow accidentally logged in as admin, because everything in the blog is editable for me to explore. So anything I don't like, or I'm like, that's not a good chart, that y-axis is messed up, and I just like click it, and now I'm doing it in the blog. And I didn't feel like anything loaded in that sense of like when you go to a Jupyter notebook and it's like, here we go, the notebook is loading. It was just a website. It seems like all websites and all blog posts should have this level of interactivity.
I think it's awesome. And I mean, it's kind of akin to, opening up your dev tools and inspecting the HTML and making edits there. And and it's just without that hurdle, it's without right there in front of you. And maybe not the most useful for editing the kind of text of blog posts, but when it comes to, somebody has written this really interesting explainer of an algorithm they developed with visualizations of how the search progresses, etc. And I want to see what would happen if you change that thing, but they didn't talk about that in this blog. I can just jump right in to the code, make whatever edits I want. In many cases, watch it fail and give an error, but revert and go back and try again and keep playing with it until I've wrapped my head around whatever the thing is that I'm trying to understand. And there's no fear of being in admin mode and changing anything because it's all local. It's all right in your client. And so as soon as you refresh the page, unless you've logged in to an account where you can make your own copy, your own fork of any notebook and save whatever edits you've made. But if you haven't done that, it'll be gone the next time you refresh, and everybody else won't see it. It's just local to you. So it's nice. I think it's really nice because it's sort of like a safe little sandbox playground. I can play in. I can't break anything. I can't hurt anybody. I can just noodle around in whatever way is most helpful to me.
Dig it. I feel like this show dovetails really nicely with last week's show that I would encourage the listeners to take a look at. This is show 798 that you're listening to. Last week is show 797, where we talked to Maria Nagaga, who works on notebooks at Microsoft. And she's thinking about it as being a new way to teach computer science, right? Like hello world at the console maybe isn't where it's at for everybody. And maybe in the browser without pressing F12 is a great way to learn about everything: computer science, data visualization, new languages, all that stuff.
I could not agree more. I think this is extremely exciting from a teacher's perspective. So before I was a software developer, I was a teacher. And so that's part of the reason I got into developer advocacy, where I get to do a lot of teaching, a lot of workshops, a lot of creating materials that folks hopefully find helpful in understanding different things. And so I've been giving a lot of the workshops that I give on functional programming, for example, or on other JavaScript features, talks that I give, been doing all of that in Observable the last year or so. And it's really been incredible because I don't need to explain any installation steps. I don't need to spend half an hour at the beginning of a workshop going around and helping people with whatever build failures they're running into and things like that. And folks can just get going, get into the core of the material without worrying about all of that other stuff. And in the case of, I think also, giving talks or giving kind of these more presentation based things, creating videos, what have you, you can put slides in Observable. We have a couple of utilities that the community has created to be able to present a talk, for example, from an Observable notebook, where you can have your visual and your code right below it, and you can edit the code live and show people how it would change. You can put sliders, you can put buttons, you have the whole web at your fingertips. And then that's like a publishable reference document that folks can go back to and tinker with on their own time. So I think I've found it personally to be amazing for teaching and the kind of teaching and explanatory work that I do. And I think the more people that are out here exploring new ways to use these type of technologies, whether it's Observable or all the other great stuff that's out there, like the work Microsoft is doing on notebooks and all kinds of other things that are exciting going on in the community, the more of us that are all thinking about that and trying to figure out new ways to make compelling courses. Like I've been seeing a lot of JavaScript courses recently released as kind of interactive web pages. They're no longer just videos with some GitHub links that then you can go download the code on. It's all right there in the page in an interactive format. And I just think it is so exciting. And I am really glad to have all of these tools at my disposal as a teacher now.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Anjana Vakil, for chatting with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been great. And look forward to listening to lots more episodes. Thanks so much,
Coming
Scott.
up on episode 800 soon. So
Amazing.
I've been doing this a long time.
Amazing.
All right. This has been another episode of Hanselminutes, and we'll see you again next week.